Are we on?
It's still initialized on this end.
It's hard work keeping this bong full.
There you are, now you're live.
What the fuck is going on, everybody in B-Real TV land and Pot TV land? And just out there in the archive world. This is class in session. It's been an epic fucking weekend. Hopefully everybody had a wicked zombie Jesus day. Had some good food, some fine weed, and some good friends and company. We did, that's for sure. Friday night, went to go see an epic fucking metal show. Today is the day. Black Tusk, Ken Mode, and Fight Amp. Now check these bands out. Like Ken Mode's from Winnipeg. They, I remember them when they were just kids. They were like, you know, the one kid was like 15 or 16 years old and had to get permission from the bar owners to just get in, to get on stage, play the set, and then get out. So yeah, pretty cool. It's, you know, I'm pretty impressed with how far they've come. They're just so fucking crushing. But today is the day. You guys got to check these guys out. This is like, it's the next step in aggression. Steve Austin, had the pleasure of hanging out with him for a little bit. The $666 million man. Fucking shout out, brother. Yeah, it was a great show, and we're gonna play one of their tunes. Can we get that queued up?
Sorry, which video?
Mother's Ruin. Yeah, we're gonna play Mother's Ruin from Today Is the Day. This will give you an idea of what kind of shit they're playing. Now, Black Tusk, holy fuck! Shout out to those guys. They fucking killed it. Fight Amp was really impressive too. All the bands were three-piece, and that's a really cool thing to see too. You know, it's like, just seems to be, you got to be a little bit more raw than the next band to make it go as a three-piece. Look at Motorhead. We ready with that?
Just about.
I'm gonna load a bowl of this Angola.
Today is the day.
You got it.
Alright, press the play right now.
This is some epic metal. I hope you guys enjoy it, or it scares you. Alright. You had you guys have it. That shit was so crushing. And it was, I gotta say, he's probably the most sincere metal performer I've seen. Like, end of the show, he was, his voice was crackling, almost like, I don't think it was from screaming. I think he was like moved. You know, he was like, you know, thanks so much to everybody. It was almost had some tears. It was almost a Johnny moment. And I gotta say, fucking A, Steve. Hope to link up with you soon, have you on for some Skype stuff, and talk about some crazy shit. So we got Chris Bennett up. What's happening, brother?
Not much, man. You have
How's
a good
life?
weekend? Life's good.
Oh yeah, it was a great weekend.
Awesome, yeah. The
Zombie Jesus meet overload.
crucifixion weekend,
Yeah, we had a crucifixion party.
There you go. In all three of my books, I've had dealt with the whole theory that the crucifixion was a hoax and that Jesus was given some sort of a soporific potion that
He was only out for 6 hours.
Yeah, threw into a death-like trance, and then they thought he was dead. And then
It wasn't
they put
even
him in
that.
the tomb.
They just gave him a serious dose of fucking Scythian hash fucking potion, so he was like could like absorb the pain.
Yeah.
And like pain, a lot of people don't realize there's serious ceremonies dedicated to pain, and when you practice pain rituals, shit really happens. So.
Cannabis was the first anesthesia.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in China, it was like a wine preparation was used for people going in operations. And in the 1950s, according to Robert Anton Wilson, the U.S. Army was doing experiments with dogs where they put them into a deep state of hibernation. And William O'Shaughnessy, who's kind of like the grandfather of Western cannabis medicine, put people into a state of catalepsy, which actually mimics death. With high doses of cannabis, you can lift their arm up and the arm just stays there and stuff. And a guy in the 19th century, Dr. James Braid, wrote a monograph, Trance in Human Hibernation. And he was writing about how fakirs in India would do big, powerful cannabis extracts, and then they'd get buried for like a week, and then somebody dig them up, and they'd still be alive a week later, you know? So, you know, there's some weight to the whole idea, you know, of the thing. And but since we're like speaking of heretical ideas, I guess it's this week I figure we talk about the father of heresy, Aleister Crowley. Rhymes with holy, not Crowley, like and pronounced foully like Ozzy does in his song Mr. Crowley. It's so funny that Ozzy actually pronounces Crowley's name wrong, and Crowley would have been greatly offended by that. Crowley, I don't know, you can run through some of those images while we talk a bit here too, if you like, Jeremiah. Crowley was a magician who lived from 1875 to 1945, English guy. Got kind of a bad rep. He's kind of like, in a lot of ways, like before you smoke weed, when you hear about weed, you hear all these bad things about it, then you try it.
You're going to turn into Aleister Crowley.
Yeah, you try it, and you find out it's all right, and there's something like that, or maybe like the Bible, where most of the people who believe in it have never read it. And with Crowley, most of the people who don't like him have never read any of his books, you know, or freaked out by him. And I even kind of fell into that class, you know, for a while myself when I was working on my first book, Green Gold, The Tree of Life, Marijuana and Magic and Religion. I was like hesitant to even research the guy because he had such a, you know, I was like almost kind of a Christian Rast at that time. And, you know, just because of his bad reputation as a Satanist and stuff. And then when I finally started cracking some of his books, I was blown away. And he's, you know, funny, clever, and has a deep desire, you know, had a deep desire to free mankind from the bonds of all this like repressive superstition that's come down to us in a lot of modern religions, particularly the Bible. And Crowley himself was brought up in a very religious household, the Plymouth Brethren, and they're where we get the whole idea of the rapture from, is from the Plymouth Brethren, that there's going to be this physical rapture on earth and whatnot. And he was like, the only book he was allowed to read as a kid was the Bible, and he had a natural rebellious element to his nature, and because of this, sometimes his mother would call him a beast, and so he started associating at a very young age with the beast of the apocalypse, whose number is 666, and basically took that as his title for the rest of his life. And he got interested in magic early on as well. He was a mountain climber, champion chess player, you know, had a had a number of different interests and pursuits, but magic really is what he was, what his greatest gift was. And he got involved with the Golden Dawn, a magic circle that had people like the poet W.B. Yeats, Lewis Carroll, Oscar Wilde's wife, all sorts of famous people from the 19th century in it.
Wasn't that Madame Blavatsky?
Well, she wasn't in that. Blavatsky had the Theosophical Society, which was another group, but she's another hashish user as well. Crowley really angered the Golden Dawn by publishing all their secret rituals, but he was a really big believer in cannabis. And in a 1907 essay, The Psychology of Hashish, Crowley wrote that in his extensive studies into the history of the cult, he found this one constant story, and I'm quoting him here. Stripped of its chronological accidents, it usually came to this. The writer would tell of a young man, a seeker after hidden wisdom, who in one circumstance or another meets an adept, who after sundry ordeals obtains from the said adept for good or ill a certain mysterious drug or potion, with the results at least of opening up the gates of the other world. This potion was identified with the elixir vitae of the physical alchemists, or one of their tinctures, most likely the white tincture, which transforms the base metal normal perception of life to silver poetic conception. So after poisoning himself with pretty much every drug in and out of the pharmacopoeia in search of this above preparation, Crowley came to believe that this substance was a sublimated or purified preparation of cannabis indica. Preceding the theories of R. Gordon Wasson, Jonathan Ott, Terence McKenna, and others by more than half a century, the beast went so far as to speculate that this ceremonial intoxication constitutes the supreme ritual of all religions. So he was already back then figuring out that, a lot of what this ancient Babylonian biblical stuff was cannabis related, and this was like this type of ceremonial intoxication was the source of our modern religions. He further hypothesized that this mysterious herb may in fact have been one of the prohibited trees in the Garden of Eden. He said, if not the tree of life, at least the other tree, double sinister and deadly. And in question to Jehovah's ancient taboos, the beast retorted, nay, for I am of the serpent's party. Knowledge is good, be the price what it may. So he decided to, go against all the prohibitions of this wonderful plant and check it out for himself. And he was pretty pleased with what he found. And he used it for long periods of his life. He traveled in the Arab world where he did it, and I believe that even his famous Book of the Law was composed under the influences of this plant. And he even makes references, to worship me, take wine and strange drug thereof, and burn my incense unto me. So he's kind of indicating his awareness of it there as well.
I've always thought that too, that it was those quotes or those references were cannabis related.
Yeah, he's kind of like a prophet of the cannabis age in a way. In The Psychology of Hashish, Crowley indicates a vast knowledge of the esoteric history of the herb, and it's a 90-page essay, the Psychology of Hashish, quoting the works of fellow hemp enthusiasts such as Zoroaster, the medieval alchemist, the works of and members of Paris's Hashish Club, and other 19th century literary figures. Crowley also translated Hashish Club member Baudelaire's poem of hashish and published it in his magical journal, The Equinox. So he was pretty well read in it. Unfortunately, he was forced into holding back much of this knowledge, though, due to his association with certain occult groups who believe that secret revealed equals power lost. And he wrote, in order to keep this paper within limits, it would be necessary to keep the article to a scientific nature and use information that was already quite available to the public at large, lest the austerity of such a goddess be profaned by the least vestige of adornment. Well, luckily, we're not bound by any such obligations, so we can speak freely of what we've reamed from it. And it's interesting because Crowley's he had this magical word which he believes summed up his philosophy, and that's the word is thelema. And the law of thelema is do as thou wilt, which means basically to follow whatever your passion is.
Doesn't just mean run amok. It means be true to yourself.
Be true to yourself, and respect other people's will. That's a big part of it. Recognize.
If you're going to be a thief, be an honest thief.
Yeah.
Don't make any qualms about, don't be a deceitful motherfucker. Just be a thief.
Be true to yourself and follow your will. I think a lot of it has to do with once you're honest with yourself as a thief, you'll realize that stealing doesn't really have a lot of reward
No,
to
for
it,
sure.
you know, and you start to like come to it. And he took this from this other guy, Francois Rabelais, who was a 15th century monk and Bachelor of Medicine, who had this great couple of books called Gargantua and Pantagruel, which was a story of giants, but was a mockery of church and state. And in the story of Gargantua, there's the Abbey of Thelema, and the law of Thelema is do as thou wilt. But what's interesting is that also in Rabelais' work, there's references to this herb Pantagruelian, which revealed references to cannabis. He had 4 chapters on this, Rabelais, and these were banned by the church for some centuries, and Rabelais himself spent a lot of time in jail. And we can be sure that Crowley associated his own use with cannabis, not just taking his word and his law of Thelema from Rabelais, but his own use of cannabis, because in a 1923 diary entry, he stated that Pantagruelian was an elixir of stone and trink and ecstasy conferring omnipotence. And the bottle of trink was this cannabis-infused wine that appears in Rabelais' book. And in his Book of Wisdom or Folly and the Tarot of the Egyptians, the Book of Thoth, Crowley again wrote at length of hashish, and on page 123 you can find this on the Book of Thoth. A lot of people have that one, his book on the tarot. And a piece entitled De Herbo Sanctissimo Arabico, which means the most holy grass of the Arab, appears in both these books. And again indicating the source of inspiration for this, in his Book of Thoth, in his Book of Thoth, he has a paragraph directly preceding the essay, and he writes, I cry out my word, as it was given to me by mine uncle, Alcofrabius Nasier, the oracle of the bottle of Babuk, and the word is trink. Well, this is a reference to Rabelais again. The bottle of Babuk was this cannabis-infused wine, and Alcofrabius Nasier, when you rearrange the letters, is Francois Rabelais. So he gives like a little indication right before his great work. And Rabelais was a great alchemist. You know, he even refers to himself as an alchemist. And he's writing in like the 14th, 15th century, so this is pretty early on in the European alchemical tradition. And this essay is really esoteric, but I love the beginning of it. I'll just read the beginning of it. Recall, O my son, the fable of the Hebrews, which they brought from the city of Babylon, how Nebuchadnezzar the great king, being afflicted in spirit, did depart from among men for 7 years' space, eating grass as doth an ox. Now this ox is the letter Aleph, and this is the Atu of Thoth, whose number is 0, and whose name is Mot, truth or Mot, the vulture, the all-mother, being an image of Our Lady Nuit, but is also called the Fool, who is Parzival, Durain, Thor, and so it referreth to him that walketh in the way of the Tao, also with who he is Harpocrates, the child Horus, walking upon the lion and the dragon. That is, he is in unity with his own secret nature. So he's, kind of tying in the biblical and Babylonian traditions with cannabis, saying that those who use it kind of end up in the Tao, being in the here and now, the present, even tying in the whole Grail mythology with Parzival. And there's some truth to that. Rabelais' book was actually a parody of the Grail, and the Knights Templar, who are often appear in Grail stories and myths, actually had a cannabis-infused wine called the Elixir of Jerusalem.
Well, I'm wondering if these guys were using a cannabis-derived vegetable stone.
Well, I think that a lot of these Europeans, they were dealing with low-quality cannabis,
but
they were dealing with extracts,
yeah,
right?
So in the like Paracelsus has this this wicked method for, well, it's alchemy, right? And it exists in 9 stages and in 3 different kingdoms. So it's like you have the vegetable kingdom, the animal kingdom, and the mineral kingdom, right? So with the vegetable kingdom, it's basically what you're doing is you're basically making an oil, right? You're vaporizing the active ingredients, condensing them, and then you're taking all of the body, right? All of the weed, and you're incinerating, you calcinate it until you get red ash, and then you mix that back with your resins, and you repeat that process 9 times, and you get stone. And it's supposed to be the ultra potent version of any of these kingdoms. So I'm wondering if that's what these guys are doing, just dropping that in their wine and just going to town.
Or burning it as an incense. Yeah, well, I don't doubt it that they were dealing with low-quality cannabis, so they had to make these extracts and refine them. And that
they
seems
might
like
have had some pretty high-quality cannabis. You never know.
Well, they probably got some imported on occasion, from the Mideast as the trail started to widen after the Crusades and whatnot.
That's true. Like, we're smoking these African genetics, and what we found out is that they predate the Portuguese arrival to Angola, which is fucking old. And they're stronger than most weeds today.
Huh.
You know, so I don't know. But yeah, that's
Yeah, well, there's a lot of occult history. I mentioned Blavatsky. Pascal Beverly Randolph is another well-known occult figure who was right into hashish. And if you go to cannabis culture right now, they've got a lecture I gave recently at the University of Victoria on cannabis and the occult. And I go into more detail on some of this stuff, as well as some of the crucifixion stuff, because that's what the Templars were burnt at the stake for was mocking the cross, you know? So yeah, check that out if you're interested in the whole occult history of cannabis. It's another fascinating period of time where this plant really blossomed.
What do you think of the theory of Jesus trying to carry on the cult of Rome and the cult of Amun-Ra?
Well, I think that my personal
his whole death to gain
my
this
personal
martyrdom
I
and
kind
all
of take more of like the Gnostic view of Jesus. So take the Nag Hammadi books into account, and it's a lot different than the biblical Jesus. I think a lot of that stuff came after the fact. As it became popular, then it became subverted by Rome, who was looking for a tool to maintain control of the public. A lot of religious cults then were almost like political parties, all seeking their role of influence on the emperor. And it kind of created a lot of chaos and disagreement in the populace. And so, Constantine, the emperor, who, is largely responsible for the creation of the New Testament and the codified Bible that we have today, he claimed that he had this vision of a cross with a banner around it, and this sign thou shalt conquer, and took it as his motto and became a Christian and banned all the other religions. And this all led directly to the Dark Ages, where all the pagan cults and then any competing, because there were all sorts of different Christian groups that are
That's where
so
we're headed
different.
again.
So different than the Christianity of the Bible, and all these groups were banned, and we had like the Dark Ages for 1,200 years. Killed.
Constantine destroyed Christians before Muslims, before Jews.
And they were put to death and slaughtered, and we had the Dark Ages for like 1,200 years, where there was no book around except for the Bible that could only be read in Latin by the few monks and bishops and whatnot that could read it. And
from
it's a terrible story.
From the Catholic standpoint, I think we're entering that phase again. We see like the rise of Opus Dei and the reinsurgence of the Jesuits and stuff.
Yeah,
taking hold of the Catholic Church.
I think the Catholic Church is kind of on slippery ground these days.
Look at the new Pope, Pope Francis. He was the leader of the Jesuits.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. He's the Black Pope, and now he has papal power. So he still has the rank of being the Black Pope as being the head of the Jesuits, and he's the head of the Catholic Papal Organization. So he's the double head.
Yeah.
He is the dragon.
Yeah, well, the way the Catholic Church, although they've like burnt people at the stake and slaughtered all sorts of people for heretics and rallied against things like the Earth being round and revolving around the sun and evolution, one of their big gifts is the way that they never get is eventually they just adapt and accept that little thing so that they can carry on. You know what I mean? And it's like
it happened.
Okay, but the rest of it's still true. You're still going to hell if you don't believe and pay us your allowance every Sunday, and it's just a horrible.
That's why we invented
chain.
purgatory, so you can pay your way to heaven.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, yeah. If you paid enough. If you paid enough back in the day, you could just avoid purgatory.
That's right. No
it's
matter
just
what
like,
you did.
oh no, you just give us this percentage of your earnings, and you won't have to go to purgatory. You can just skip that stage and you go right to heaven.
Yeah, it's all a big payoff,
What the
and
fuck?
there's no forgiveness of sin without sinning, so everybody gets to play the game pretty good.
Tidings are a very tidy way of earning money.
Yeah.
Or selling indulgences.
Yeah, for sure. It was all the
selling indulgences.
The perversion of the Catholic Church and the child molestation cases that actually first got me reading the Bible, and trying
Some
to figure
serious
out
shit
what the hell's
there.
going on with this stuff.
What the fuck is wrong with these guys?
Yeah, like where's this coming from?
When I was a kid, I grew up Catholic. I was like, you know, went through catechism, blah blah blah. But when they asked me to be an altar boy, I thought something was up. And then they were like trying to invite me to play floor hockey with the priests.
Yeah,
Not fucking happening, dude.
Yeah, take a shower and there
I was smoking hash by the time I was 12, so
yeah, there you go.
I was on to those fuckers.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think, you know, Scientologists just hate cannabis because it's so hard to brainwash people. I think it's the same for the Catholic Church. They've been burning cannabis as heretics. You know, they even claimed it was a devil's sacrament in the medieval ages. So it's always been about people. You smoke weed and then you listen to what they say and you go, yeah, right.
My exit for catechism was we had one of the big priests in our church was teaching the class, and I said to him, I said, okay, is God all powerful? And he said, yes. And I said, can he make a rock so big he can't lift it? And he didn't know how to answer it, man. He didn't know what the fuck to say. So with that, I was like, I didn't go back. I went home. I told my parents. I said, I can't go to catechism anymore.
So the rock question led you to being stoned.
Well, I was stoned. I was stoned when I asked the question.
There you go. That'll do it. Yeah. Well, that proves my point then.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, maybe it is the devil's weed after all.
No, it's well.
Well, you know, would the devil ever do in the Bible, right? He kind of like
he just made it.
God, yeah. God kills everybody you know, in the Old Testament. Anyways, it's more of a body count than a religion.
Yeah. We're gonna fucking rain hellfire on this village. Fucking turn some lady to salt.
Yeah. I like the talking donkey in Balaam, the story of Balaam there, the talking donkey. The horse cannot talk, of course. But yeah, there's a lot of talking animals, and people turning into salt, the sun standing still in the sky, although the earth's revolving around this. You know, there's a lot of crazy.
There's a lot of getting stoned in the Bible.
Yeah. Well, I think you'd have to be pretty stoned to believe some of the stories in there, for sure.
Verbatim, yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them are just
symbolic.
Encoded messages, misinterpreted stories.
Well, it's like a Frankenstein religion in that it's put together of all these different parts. Even before the time of Jesus, there's
there's
four different groups of editors had their hands in it, and they all had different beliefs and came from different times. And when you take a look at each prophet, God's a little bit different in each of the stories because it's written by a new guy that has a new kind of interpretation of things, you know?
Yeah, I think it was like 3 Muslims, 4 Jews, and a couple atheists that sat down and said, let's make a religion.
Yeah, well, there you go. Well, the Muslims came later, but yeah. Yeah, pretty crazy stuff for sure.
And then Christianity was born.
And then Christianity, yeah, and what a pox that's been on the story. How did the Prince of Peace turn into all this fire and brimstone?
It's pretty crazy.
It's you know, people being burnt at the stake and drowned as witches and all sorts of stuff.
Well, this new pope scares the shit out of me, man.
Yeah.
I know he made this call for world peace with his Easter speech and all of that.
Well, as long as they convert to Catholicism, that's his
but,
idea. Everything else is Satanism.
Yeah, he scares the fuck out of me.
Yeah.
That guy's is the dangerous man.
Yeah.
You got to remember the Jesuits, they did all of the, you know, they did things that were crazier than what Hitler did to people. Like, they were cutting people.
There's even pictures of Catholic Church members with Hitler shaking his hand and
well,
stuff.
you got to remember Mussolini was Italian, and the Catholic Church had a common interest, and they funneled a lot of money through that organization.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, it's pretty fucked up, man.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, sell the Vatican and feed the poor.
I think so, or at least some of the tiles.
Yeah. Or at least the Pope's funny big gold hat. I'm sure you could get a few bucks for that on eBay.
The stick, the hat.
The hat.
Just get the Mormon Tabernacle. Oh, they're Mormons. They don't count.
Oh, right.
Never mind.
They got the magic hat instead. Another magic hat.
Yeah, that's a whole different episode. All right, brother.
Cheers, man. Always a pleasure.
Thanks for coming out. Thanks for taking the time. Chris Bennett. Check him out. Check out Cannabis and Occultism on Cannabis Culture homepage. And do we have hashtag this queued up? Yeah? This is a video Rose made. Take care, Chris. Yeah, this is a video Rose made. She's a fucking wizard. So it's called #this, and here we go.
So that's awesome.
That's a crazy video. What's that?
Stick that in there. That's the brother of Hashnag.
All right. Well, this in my hand is the brother, the brother of Hashnag. Ish the brother. It's the brother of Hashnag. Featured in #this.
There's more sitting over there, but nothing showing that.
So hope you guys like that. That's some pretty amazing shit. You can just do it on your phone, apparently. I don't know who you call to do that, but apparently you just do that on your phone. Yeah, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just fucking making some wizard shit on my phone. Can you imagine, you know, people from not even like 1,000 years ago, people from the 50s, not even that long ago, people from the 50s, if you were showing them all this shit, holy fucking Buck Rogers. I just met Buck Rogers. What the fuck? I just met Buck Rogers. This guy was out of the world. He fucking made this crazy thing on his phone. What the fuck? So, thanks to Rose, that just blows my mind. There's more hash videos coming up. Hey, maybe I can give you the Full Melt Satan.
I already got it. I'm going to make you an intro for your show for next week.
Oh, we're gonna have an intro coming up. Killer. Well, we got Adam Bowen up next.
Yeah!
How the fuck was Zombie Jesus Day?
Zombie Jesus, bro. He rose from the dead, walked all over the place, was like, hey, Thomas, put your hand in my wound if you don't believe I'm a zombie.
That was actually Mary of Magdalene dressed like Jesus.
Was it?
And the wound is misinterpreted.
Whoa. Oh, wombed. Or wombed. Nah, I'm stretching there. Stretching there. Yeah, man. Fucking Easter was good. My wife's Armenian, and so we went down to Seattle.
So it's a very special, like, it's a serious time.
Old Christianity, the first Christianity on the planet, national Christianity was in Armenia, and they were Zoroastrians before that, which you've talked about on the show with Chris before.
Yeah, which is pretty amazing.
Pretty cool. Zoroaster, a lot of cannabis in there, and Armenia is quintessential. Actually, if you look at the oldest maps that we have, Armenia is at the center of all of them. Not to say that Armenians made the maps, but Armenia is just at the center because that was the center focal point of that ancient world there. So, yeah, interesting. Ancient roots. And it's cool because we're kind of a species of humanity with amnesia. We don't really remember a lot of bits about our antiquity.
It's selective amnesia.
Totally. And with all the modern genetic research that's been done, the mapping of the human genome, all of this genetic shit. I mean, we've been searching for the missing link as long as I can remember. As a kid, I remember talking about the missing link, going to the ROM Museum in Toronto, the Royal Ontario Museum, and looking at the old humans looking for the missing link. I mean, I love that term, the missing link. And still, with all our advances in genetics, we still can't find the missing link.
There is no missing link.
No, of course not. But we don't know what there is, right? It's all speculation.
Oh yeah, they have all those skulls, and just like the giant skulls, they've just gone into. It's like, here, you guys can't see these ones. The intermediate period where we turned into this, you can't see that stuff.
Well, Lloyd Pye's got one. Hey, Jeremiah, they might be interested just to see this link. Can you find a picture of the Star Child skull? And maybe put a link on the thing, because that's an interesting. Have you seen the Star Child skull? There's a guy named Lloyd Pye, and he's been a carekeeper of this skull that they found with other skeletons around it, that were buried in a cave around the time of the 1600s. But this skull has got so many different anomalies. It's got this little face, this big giant 2 lobes on its head. Every single feature of this skull, the jaw, the nose, the teeth, the cheeks, every feature is deformed, and not in a way that we know about deformations to happen. So, for example, they'd send this skull to you, and you are an expert on ocular and brow ridges, eyeballs, this area, right? So you go, well, you know what? I've never seen anything like this. I don't know anything close to this, but it's got to be natural. And so then I take it to Jeremiah. Jeremiah is all about ears and stuff, right? He says, well, no, this is nothing like I've ever seen or ever known throughout history, but it must be natural. And then we send it to Rose over there, and Rose knows about jaw lines and so on and so forth. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, this thing is fucked. And so I've been listening to Lloyd Pye tell stories about this for the last maybe 10 years, because he's on Coast to Coast AM and Red Ice Radio and some of these other awesome alternative sources that don't really, they just present information. They don't tell you whether or not it's true or take a stance. They just present the information, kind of like we do here, right? So I've been following this story, following this guy's search for cheaper and cheaper genetics, because as the years go by, genetic testing gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Whereas at the beginning, when you first started listening to him, it was millions and millions of dollars for like this little thing, and now it's, you can actually do genetic stuff for thousands and thousands of dollars, and you can get better strains and better samples and better results and stuff. And so this skull that is decidedly, it's got human genetics. It's got human mitochondrial DNA, which means it's from the mother, so it's got a human mother, but not necessarily a human father. Interesting. You can do your own research on it. Lloyd Pye is the guy who's holding that and who's got it, and even his stuff, because he's all about genetics, because he's been trying to fucking study this skull or get it done for years and years. So he's got a really good handle on what the genome is, weird things, kind of like a bit in the gene called the FOXP2, and the FOXP2 is different than any other life form, and the FOXP2 we know is because it deals with our language. So the humans have...
I used to watch The Shield on Fox P2.
Yeah, man. And the whole 46 and 2, we have 48 chromosomes. Everything else on the planet has 42 chromosomes. If you look at us and a chimpanzee, it looks like somehow the chimpanzee's second and third chromosome were fused together or blasted apart. Just like it's similar to ours, but it looks like they've actually tinkered with it. There's a lot of really interesting little weirdnesses in the genetic thing. See, I'm in the habit of taking hits before I finish my sentences. Well, yeah. Anyway.
Just a little something I like to do.
No, I'm just actually rehearsing a new song I just wrote called Coughing. It kind of goes like that. But I think I'm going to bring the chorus up a little bit. Oh, my goodness. So, yeah, it was cool that you and Chris were talking about, for a moment, modes of mentality and how you think differently depending on, what religion you are, what your focus is. And that I can kind of segue a little bit because, as we've been talking about in the past, I've been doing this Afrobeat band with these Nigerian guys. And man, it really is a different world out there. And so I've been getting into this guy, Fela Kuti. And at first, I've heard of Fela Kuti quite a while. I'm sure you might have heard of him too. His son Femi Kuti, is doing Afrobeat stuff too. But Fela Kuti is the guy who kind of started Afrobeat. And he, well, he just, I just knew him as a musician with 30 players, and they played this really complicated polyrhythms and kind of political tunes, and he was just like a ripping ass entertainer. That's what I knew that he was in the 70s. Well, you get into it a little bit, and it turns out that he's not just a ripping ass entertainer. He's also a politician. He was running to be president of Nigeria, even though I don't think he even came close. The point was that, he was a political dissident. He was like a rebel as well. And all his songs were actually, protest pieces. And he made quite a lot of waves for himself.
I bet.
So there's that aspect of this gentleman. And another aspect of this gentleman is just his whole philosophy of life, because the more you get into this guy, and I got some clips here that one is quite long. It's almost an 8-minute clip, but I think you're going to enjoy it, and we'll talk about the clip in a second. But I just want to talk around it for a moment and just give you some context to who this guy is. So Fela, he made this great comment about to speak what you and Chris were talking about in mindset and religion. He was saying, in Africa we've lost our identity because the Christians, they all think like Europeans. And the Muslims, they all think like Arabs. Africans don't think like Africans anymore. And I thought that was really concise, especially for us here over in North America, because although we were colonized by Europeans, we're really cultureless. We're really like this cultureless orphan in the world that's grown up and is taken over the world with our lack of culture or our culture homogenization, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. Gray is gray is gray. If you get gray from only adding a couple colors or get gray from adding all the colors, it's still fucking gray that you end up with. That's a metaphor for culture, by the way, in case you smoke too much.
That kind of reminds me, when I first moved to Vancouver, I met this old Italian dude. And whatever, we were talking, he was fixing up his yard and stuff. But he had said when he first moved to Canada, everything was different, right? He thought in Italian, everything was Italian, right? And he had to work really hard to translate the English thing. Then he started making these slow transitions where he would communicate in English and, he would not have to translate in his head. But he was still dreaming in Italian. And then he said he started dreaming in English. And then he knew he was Canadian.
Yeah.
So it was just the transition that he went through. It's
totally. And anyone bilingual will understand that a different language or a different and I'm also equating religion to language, because a religion is a value system. It control sure. and language is a subtle value system. When they go down into South America, the anthropologists, and they say, well, what's your word for nature? And the natives go, well, there is no, what do you mean nature? And they go, well, there's us, and then there's nature. And they go, like Rose is laughing, no, there is no us and nature. We are nature, there's one. So that to have a word supposing it kind of puts that mental construct in your brain, and you deal with the world that way. So Fela, in an attempt to use music as a tool to bring back the old ways, Kale, the guy that is in my band, he had access to Fela, because Fela was from Lagos, from this slum in Lagos, the capital of Nigeria. And he was very accessible to the entire community. He was kind of loved. He was kind of like a new breed of chief that walked around with a saxophone and, and little Speedos and whatever. But he was, it's Africa. But he was accessible. And so Keo said he would tell me that before the clip that you're about to see, this is at his shrine. And every week he'd have people go, not to his club, the club that he owned, called the shrine, but actually physically was a shrine. And he'd sacrifice an animal beforehand and and scatter the blood and feathers and do the thing outside with his band and with his core, which were a lot of people, by the way, and then come and do the thing. All of the women dancers that you're going to see in this clip are his wives. He married everybody because he believes firmly that in Europe a man marries a wife and then runs out in the street to find another woman. Why would you have other women in the street? They should be in your own house. In Africa, we don't teach women to be jealous. And so he's got this whole other idea, philosophy, a community, a commune of over 100 people that live in the center of the most dangerous place on earth in the 70s and 80s, Lagos. Violent fucking place. Do some research, man. That place is gnarly. They're killing people one Sunday a month on the best beach for robberies. They're straight up on one Sunday morning on the nicest beach in Lagos. That's what they were doing for a time period, and this was the time period. So this is the area and the air that Fela is existing in and what he's coming out of. And so this clip that you're going to see is it's a little later on in the shrine. You can see all the water on the floor because they've been in there dancing. They go in at about midnight, and bands have already been playing all night, and they don't leave till 7 a.m. till sun up. So these guys are in there all the time. About 2 hours into the show, they do a little ritual to Chongo and to a couple of these other higher gods that have analogs in Native American traditions, South American traditions. They have all the analogs are the same, you know, Isis, Osiris, and Horus, same-ish. Just, you know, Africa's the same, man. You get into the African stuff, it's same-ish, just told in a different vernacular.
There's like five kind of main systems of voodoo.
Yep, and Santeria, and they're all based...
Well, Santeria is kind of like the Cuban version.
Yeah, also, it's in you know, L.A. and in down
but
there.
that comes from the African presence in Cuba, where they brought some of their religions, and then because Cuba had a huge Catholic.
Yeah, and Dominican, little bit Dominican too. It was Santeria is just mixing the saints because the saints have the same stories as some of the African deities.
It was a way of hiding voodoo.
Yeah.
With Christianity.
Yeah. Anyway, so before we run out of time, because this is a long clip, and I brought two. Let's cue this clip up. This is fucking awesome. Now you're gonna see some amazing dancing. He's bringing each one of his wives, and notice when he brings the last guy out. He brings a dude out, and he's tapping him. He's playing him like a drum, as well as driving him into the ground. And this guy never stops playing his fucking clave. He's like on this weird thing, and he never stops playing. They are in a trance. And you talked about pain rituals and music rituals. This is a window, and we're so blessed to have this footage.
Oh, rhythm's a huge fucking ritual.
Yeah, the 8-minute one. This is a window into some shit that we don't get in North America very often. So dig it, man, because we need to bring this shit back.
Let's get
Fela ransom, Kuti. What can you say about Fela? We went to Calabar to film him, and it rained. In Calabar, they have over 200 inches of rain a year. This night they proved it. Everybody got soaked. It's a wonder no one got electrocuted.
does it? We're back now. All right, we're back.
So what?
So what's going on? Yeah, man, that shit is awesome. I know it was a long video, but I really wanted to share it with you guys because, in the what am I talking about? It's fucking sublimator, man. In the interest of education, because this is classes in session, really, man, being exposed to that kind of music making, understanding music on that kind of cultural level, really is an important human lesson. If more humans understood that type of freedom in their lives, that type of release, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter the reason, then, man, that's one of the greatest gifts you can give to humanity. One of the greatest lessons you could teach another human is to release like that. And so maybe we can't teach that to you, but we can definitely show you some motherfuckers who do it pretty good. And,
or you guys can drop a shitload of acid.
Well, yeah.
And just pick up some instruments and go to town. Or tune into our jam nights at every Tuesday night. We're streaming those now.
Oh shit, yeah. Well, that's how Parliament did. I really draw a lot of parallels from Fela to George Clinton and Parliament. Just the large band, the loops and the funk. The personal element, the preacher element, because believe it or not, Parliament we're absolutely preaching a way. The music itself is a way of life, and although Fela smoked ganja, I don't think he partook in any kind of Western psychedelics. I wouldn't doubt that he did some crazy African stuff, potentially.
I guarantee he did some crazy stuff that we couldn't even comprehend.
But yeah, I mean, the guy has a whole different outlook on life. He's got at one point in his life, he had like 25 wives, and they were living in a compound.
Oh, that's got to be work.
No, man, because everybody was all good. But they weren't wives; they were his queens. They were his queens, and oh my goodness! And not only that, but he had out of his queens, he had visionaries. I guess in Africa, it's a common thing for a lot of people to have their own. What did he call them? Ishikaras? No, that's probably saying it wrong. But there's a name for these women who are seers, who help you see the future, and and a lot of people have them in his employ, including Fela. Priestesses, absolutely. So the whole music, the whole way of life, it's not just one thing. Like Pythagoras, we'll go back to the beginning. We were talking about Pythagoras. It's not math or music or science or religion. It's not us and nature. It's a holistic. It's all one. The music is the expression of the spiritual religion, which is and then your life choices, i.e., how many wives you can live with, and if they can live under the same operation and principle. That's an extension of your religious and sociological principles, which is an extension of your science, because everything is all built on what you know and how you interact with the world, and how you interact with the world is predicated on all of these things together, not any one individually. And we're fools. We've been boboed, as Fela Kuti says. Them bobo, them fool us. There's a great song called Dem Bobo, anyway, that we play. They fool us. They fool us into thinking that all this bullshit, all this different stuff is compartmentalized, But it's not. It's all the same. It's all holistic. So to understand what Fela is about in his approach to life and living and changing the world as a human individual can, it is to understand a deeper understanding about what it really is, not held back by generations and generations of cultural programming like us white people have, because literally there's lots of it. Generations, man. I don't need to tell you. Generations, man. Fucking. But in Africa, there's still tribes and people living in the old way in the bush. In Nigeria alone, you ask Keo, ask any Nigerian, you speak Nigerian? Goes, no, I can't suck my teeth right. They do it different. Nigeria, man, they speak 250 languages, man. Wow. There's languages in the bush that nobody know. You don't know. I don't know. Bush language. And they come in, they go, and they speak some of our language, but they speak Bush to each other. You know, and it's like, okay, well, whoa. So you get this place.
That's a whole different,
And you get these roots of culturalism, like we talked about Haile Selassie being, you know, the direct line to Solomon through the Queen of Sheba. And then, you know, that knowledge that he's passing down to the Rastafarians.
And that's how we keep strains, or not we, but that's how they've kept strains like this
Was that
Liamba.
Congolese?
Well, no, this
Liamba.
is the Liamba, which is Angola Roja. But that's how they keep strains like this pure. You know, because they have such isolated cultures.
Yeah, man. It's and then they pass that idea down. So anyway, that was my attempt to, you know, shed some light on some cultures that don't really get light shed on them very often, and you know, different perspective to show you the way.
Fuck yeah! Check out Fela Kuti, King of Rhythm.
Oh yeah, King of Rhythm tight too. Jeremiah, do you want to post that link, the other link to the other video in the chat?
Sure, that's the authority stealing one?
Yeah, the authority stealing one. This is Fela in a Speedo for a second, but don't let it ruin it for you. It's a cool rehearsal, and we don't have time to play it today because David's going to talk about some mind-blowing shit.
Oh yeah.
But I think that's it for me.
One of my as a teenager, this was one of my drugs of choice.
Yeah,
All right, brother.
buddy. I think most of us.
Yeah, for sure.
Aloha, everybody.
Thanks for taking the time, brother.
Right on, brother.
Hello.
What's happening?
Brought some Sandoz LSD with me.
No, you didn't.
What?
Bam. Yeah, this is marked delicid. It's the name of LSD that Sandoz gave to its drug that
I was not expecting that.
Yeah, this is a tightly guarded little vial at the Herb Museum. Is that showing up?
It looks good.
Okay.
You can turn it around to see the sides, though. You might
So,
have to scroll around.
it says poison. Anything you take a whole bottle of and have an unpleasant experience is labeled poison. It doesn't mean you're going to die of this LSD, but if you take
Hold it
probably
down a
more
little
than
bit.
one or two of these babies, you're going to be busy for a while. This is the pure pharmaceutical grade LSD created by the creators of LSD, so it's very rare. And it comes in a box labeled physician sample. Like, here, doc, try this. It's for your crazy people to make them less crazy. That's basically most of the LSD research in the 1960s and 50s. That was what it was for. Its stated purpose was to look into mental illness.
Wow.
Yeah, this is the creator of LSD, Albert Hoffman.
Oh, I should have
And
brought
this is
my
his book,
I should have brought my Bob High paintings.
Oh yeah. He's inspired a lot of artwork in his time with his little creation. He also synthesized psilocybin from mushrooms. But back in the 40s, he was just dicking around with ergot. This stuff here. This ergot is kind of a fungus that's on.
Yeah,
mostly on rye.
black fungus.
Yeah, and this is actually this vial is filled with ergot from Dr. Hoffman.
Allegedly, that started the whole werewolf craze.
Well, it was responsible. It grew on rye, and people in the Middle Ages used to accidentally mill this rye flour into bread, and it was responsible for something called St. Elmo's fire, which was ergot poisoning, and people would trip balls even back then. Here is a picture of ergot growing on rye.
St. Elmo's fire.
St. Elmo's fire. This is this is from Sandoz's farms, ergot farms. I don't know, is that coming through? Can you see that?
Yeah, looks perfect.
All right, up a little bit. There you go. Sandoz, 1961 publication. This is their ergot farm, and so he was looking at it, and it came in all sorts of medicines back in the day. A lot of which were uterine medicines for childbirth.
What?
Yeah. Well, look, ergolapioli.
Yeah.
Right. This one is an old bottle. Ergotoli from Sharp and Dom.
That
Right.
blows my mind.
Yeah, ergot was A medicine used for many things. Here's the Eli Lilly, more recent ergot. There we go. Doesn't say what it's used for. But yeah, it was used for different things, including uterine medicine. And he was looking at it, trying to figure out what to do with it. And he got a little bit of this LSD-25, which is a synthetic preparation derived from ergot. And he got a little bit on his skin, and it went through his skin. And he was like, whoa, this is active, this LSD-25. So what should I do? Well, I'll take a dose, but I'll be sure to take like a really small dose, like I don't know, 50 micrograms or something, some way smaller than any active compound. And then I'll increase the dose slowly until it becomes active.
50 micrograms is a really mild trip.
It's a mild trip, but back before trips existed at all, he thought he was taking a sub-threshold dose and he was going to increase it till he found the threshold. Turns out that was plenty, and he decided to bike home because he wasn't feeling well. And
I've got a painting of that.
Right, the bicycle trip, yes. It's a very famous bike ride. Bicycle Day, it's called. The day he really, truly found out the power of LSD. This is an interesting artifact.
That was 2 Fridays ago for me, by the way.
Bicycle Day?
I finally found out the power of
Oh,
Oh,
really?
you just walked
Yeah.
into the Church of LSD?
It's a great way to spend 8 hours.
Or 12.
Or 12 hours.
Or
depending on
3 or 4 days.
Depending on the dose, again, and your sensitivity to it.
Two of which standing on a stick, flipping a stick.
This is Maclean's magazine from October 1st, 1953. It's the first media mention of LSD. The people to bring LSD over from Switzerland to North America were the CIA. And they were looking for a mind control truth serum kind of drug. And so they were testing everything at the time. They also sponsored the hunt for the psilocybin mushrooms in Mexico by Gordon Wasson. That was Subproject 62 in the CIA's dossier. But this is kind of what they were looking at, mental illness and insanity, and LSD as a way to understand and explore and potentially treat it. Now they're looking at LSD as a way to deal with people who are dying and just to come to terms with death.
There's been some new studies.
Yeah, this is the first American mention of LSD, January 1954 Reader's Digest. You can still find this available for sale at Amazon and eBay, and you can read all about LSD and their first experiments with it. Again, that's a little bit more easy to find than the Maclean's magazine. Here is Life magazine, and now this is well into the 60s. This is 1966, and somebody like the Beatles would mention on television that they tried LSD, or this is after the Merry Pranksters started crossing the country and dosing everyone right before it became illegal in the United States in 66, in California in 66, and everywhere else in 1968. And for the longest time, it was legal, and people were just trying it out in university campuses and hospitals, and that's how Ken Kesey got turned on for the first time as well. And actually, Timothy Leary, another famous LSD user, he was a professor at Harvard, and he dosed all of his students multiple times, hundreds of times.
Ken
and
Kesey
then got in
was,
trouble for it when people found out how much fun it was.
Ken Kesey was selling himself as a guinea pig to get through college.
That's right. That's right.
And that's where he first. And then he stole a dose, and then he made this crazy chili that they called venison chili, and there were all these reporters down to their little beatnik kind of spot to kind of do a report on the beat culture, and he fed all these people LSD infused chili.
Yeah, the original experiments with LSD were a white guy in a lab coat asking you questions under fluorescent bulbs and saying, "Hey, are you feeling tense, paranoid now? How are you feeling? The wall's closing in on you now?" And it would have an effect on the results of the experiment. But Ken Kesey saw the best setting and mindset to do LSD was at a Grateful Dead concert. So he basically invited the Dead, who were a new band, to
they were just a little garage band at that time.
The acid test, which was kind of a play on words. The acid test is a kind of a chemistry term. But he said, let's have the acid test. And the test was, are you going to keep your shit together while you listen to the Grateful Dead play and get dosed on LSD?
Well, it wasn't just listen to them. It was part of the acid test was for the people involved. Could they set up all of that gear while they were so lit? They had to do all of the audio. They had crazy visuals. There was parties that Ken Kesey would throw where they would literally run wire through the bush and put speakers in trees and fucking all over the place and have like these crazy fucking LSD parties.
He understood that it was more than just sound, it was also light, so they had an incredible light show.
Oh yeah, nutty visuals.
And they also got a hold of some really good LSD by a guy named Owsley.
Yeah.
Who was a chemist.
The White Rabbit.
Protege, yeah. He's represented by the bear in all the Grateful Dead imagery. He's this bear. He was called, that was his nickname, the Bear. And so, Owsley acid was world famous as being pure and wonderful and very potent. And that's the LSD that they used from, I think, 1964 onward, or 65 onward, to accentuate the experience. This is a non-active bit of blotter art.
So that's LSD. Just like blotter, that's just a plain blotter sheet, there's nothing on it.
What it is LSD is so powerful, doses can be, just a matter of soaking paper in LSD juice and letting it dry, and then you have pretty much the same dose in every square bit of paper, and then they perforate the paper so it's easier to measure the doses. This paper then became a way also for artists to express themselves in trippy ways, put trippy images on the paper, or images that are connected with LSD culture. And now this medium of blotter art has become so popular that they just forgot to add the LSD to it.
Ken Kesey's son has basically that's one of the things that he does is he sells blotter art.
Blotter art, yeah. So it's a beautiful way, to express trippy imagery on this perforated paper that has.
Watch yourself. You sublimated?
Yeah, I'm maybe a little underdosed. Do you have a joint?
I could get a joint.
Yes.
Handy, no
I'm
problem.
glad you have papers here for me. You know me. I'm a joint man. Different tokes for different folks. But you got something with a little myrcene in it? Anything on the indica side of things?
Sure.
Excellent. So yeah, LSD, created by Sandoz. Sandoz was a part of IG Farben at the time, but this is one of the good things they did.
So what were some of your most memorable trips?
On LSD, I'm easily nauseous on hallucinogens. I feel queasy really easy. So I need a distraction in order to not feel sick. Great. So I like a mosh pit when I trip, because I feel like running around anyway. I'm really hyperactive when I'm on LSD. So I like to...
So a good hardcore show?
Oh yeah, something like, Frontline Assembly. Back in the day they used to play Edmonton. And I remember being high on LSD for that. And then we went to Highwood 94, this outdoor concert. And it was, the thing to do is to do like a little bit of LSD, and then smoke some weed, and then have a couple of beer, and then smoke some more weed, and then do LSD again, and just ride different highs all weekend long. Felt good. I didn't do much sleeping. Not a lot of sleeping on LSD.
You don't do a whole lot of sleeping.
Not a whole lot of sleeping on LSD. If you need to do something like go for your first day of work at the Edmonton Young Offender Center, not a really good idea to do LSD the night before, because that's I can tell you from personal experience that you'll be high the next day.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Plus
See, that was a
on
that was a
sleep
drug of choice
deprivation.
when I was a kid. I went to school on acid, and it's like near the end of grade 9, and there was this teacher. He's just a really odd fellow.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, why not?
He always wore a blazer with the the suede elbow patches, and he had a flip back to hide his bald spot and stuff. And he's a very, very nice guy, and kind of goofy. But he's walking down the hall, and he had this little walk. He's all, he's walking down the hall, and I end up turning, and it's like now I'm behind this crazy little bastard. I'm fucking high. So I'm kind of tensing up, and I'm walking, and I'm trying not to make a sound, and I'm really literally grade 9. I was so I shouldn't have been in school. Well, actually, I shouldn't have done acid. In hindsight, as an adult, maybe let's take that lesson away. Okay, now we've got the media.
It's all about setting and mindset. Yeah. If you're not in the proper setting,
so what happens? But he stops dead in his tracks, and I'm like 2 feet behind him, and he bends down and he fucking picks something up from the ground, and he turns around like he knew I was there the whole time, directly to me, and he's holding a dime, and he's like, "A dime is time," and he puts it in his pocket, and he just turns back around and walks away. I stood there so fucked up. So yeah, that was
time.
Yeah, and then I got surprised with a science test.
My first LSD trip.
That was about my 4th trip, I think.
I had to go to work the next day. It was my first day of work at the Edmonton Young Offender Center. It was still high when I woke up the next morning. I only got a couple hours sleep. I'm good, just one hit wonder. So I go into work, and the first thing I do is kind of meet the guy in behind all the control panels and the cameras for everything. I'm kind of the hub of it all. And he's like, "Oh yeah, and this is the outside gate, and this is the indoors, and this is the boot room, and this is this, and this is that." And then I point to a camera on a guy who's on a cot, and the guy's shaking. He's like having a fit or something. I said, "What about that one there?" He said, "Oh yeah, that's isolation." Uh-oh. And he calls in a medical emergency. And I see 3 people run past this hub room and into the isolation station, and they're surrounding the guy who was shaking. Turns out the guy who was shaking was just fucking with them, and it's kind of he felt like having some company. Didn't want to be so alone.
Wanted some human interaction
because the isolation chamber could be quite boring. So that was my introduction to my job as a recreational therapist at the Edmonton Young Offender Center.
High on acid.
High on LSD, yeah.
That was your first trip?
That was my first trip and my first day. Well, that was the day after my first trip, but I was still, I was still seeing tracers, like colors that were still there.
I used to love the day after, man. It's the day after is awesome.
Yeah, and everything was kind of emphasized as being extra ridiculous, especially jail for kids. Most of them were harmless.
I think one of my favorite trips, we used to do these May-long weekend trips in Winnipeg Beach. And it was a pretty cool place. They had these giant sculptures of these heads made out of redwood shipped from here, and just crazy stuff. So we used to trip there every weekend. And we'd start usually on the Thursday and end on the Sunday. So Friday afternoon, I find myself with this big log. And I threw it against a rock, and it split, and the core, the center of the log, popped out. And I was like when you're looking at the rings,
yeah.
That middle ring literally just popped out, and it was like this stick, and it had little nubs coming out. It was the craziest thing, and it was so smooth. And I grabbed it, and I started flipping it, and it had this natural spin to it. It didn't matter how high I threw it; it just came down in my hand perfect every time. And I ended up standing on this piece of wood that was on 2 chairs, and I stood on this thing for it was a day and a bit, flipping this stick. Yeah, that was before I knew it, it was Saturday evening, and things were different.
Well, everybody has their own favorite drug for inspiration. Some people get ideas on weed, like me. Other people get their ideas on LSD, I think Steve Jobs or half the computer programmers.
Yeah, wouldn't doubt that.
What happens is LSD sits you down, makes you just live in your head for a while. Makes you think.
Yeah.
If you don't have time to think in your day-to-day, LSD will make you take the time
See,
to
what
think.
I started doing as later on in my adult life, like when I got into my 30s and stuff, I started taking it almost as a therapy.
Yeah.
Like when things were going crazy, it's like, they're just not fucking doing life isn't doing what you want it to do, kind of thing. It's like, why the fuck isn't everything working?
Yeah.
I would always do a trip, and it would cause me to look like inside of me and find those things that were hindering that progress.
Yeah.
And I would have to confront them, and I stopped taking it to get stoned with my buddies and to party with, and actually started doing it by myself, just in in a room with. Yeah, it was a great way to look inward and confront some of the shit that you can't really get to on a conscious level.
Not that recreational LSD use
Oh,
isn't
no,
also good.
That's great too. But like when you're a kid, man, fucking
Explore doses.
All
There's
through your
really
20s, it's a great thing, man.
the overdose on LSD isn't lethal, but I know a guy on disability who got on disability because he took 600 hits of LSD at one time.
Well, at one time that would be a pretty heavy dose.
Yeah, and so he's capable of tying his shoes, but not much else.
See, my scariest trip, I was given a little bit of powder, and I think the guy thought he was giving me MDMA.
Yeah.
But it was a little bit of crystal LSD.
Yeah. Ooh.
And I was so fucked up. It was like, it went on for about a week. And I had just a little tiny bit on my tongue with a shot glass, and boom, the whole world just, my buddy turned into he had his face kept growing and growing, and he kind of looked like a camel or a donkey, and he was like,
Yeah.
and then I just had to get out of there, and then it was nuts. I thought my dog was a lion. It was a pretty crazy thing.
Yeah.
So you got to really be careful when you're toying around with shit like this, because it can fuck you up if you're not a psychonaut, like a psychic warrior. Then
If you're not familiar with the dose, it could surprise you.
That's for
LSD is still one of the most potent drugs on earth.
It's a dangerous thing. So you got to really be careful if you do decide to take that plunge. And
Yeah.
and,
You want to. Yes.
Forgive me if you guys address this well. I wasn't paying attention.
Yes.
But the science of what's actually happening to the brain when you take LSD. What do we know about that?
Well, the way it was described in the electric Kool-Aid acid test is that it's a gland that regulates thoughts per second. And they assimilate it to kind of being a newborn in the first 5 or 6 days before this gland is fully developed. And you're experiencing way more thoughts per second, so much that you can see light patterns. Because light travels in waves, and everybody knows the higher we get, we start seeing these bands, these waves, and we're seeing the light patterns. And the higher we get, we can see the sound waves, stuff like that. And it's just, our brain has this filter in it so that we don't see these distractions. There's audio distractions that are going on all the time too. Like, we see just such a small percentage of the UV spectrum, like and that's all we're capable of seeing. It doesn't mean that there isn't other things that are going on outside of the spectrums that we can perceive. It's this filter that we're developed with, so that we're not. It's so that we're not confused with all of these things. Like, everybody's dyslexic.
That's what I
You know
heard
what I
too.
mean? Everybody's dyslexic.
That it has to do with the filtering system.
Shit's always upside down, and it's not. It's only this filter that allows us to perceive things in a way that we can handle it.
I was told the same thing. I've been looking for this book for ages, LSD, My Problem Child, because I was told it has a really detailed account of the LSD experience from the chemist's perspective, and I hadn't been able to find it until last night when I was at Banyan Books, and I just want to show you a couple of pictures.
Books.
Yeah, Banyan Books is.
Hey, I also want to say a shout out to.
Oh yeah, sorry. I just want to show a couple pictures from the book.
I gotta say a shout out to Uprising Bakery, because they did me a solid today.
Right, yeah, Uprising's very delicious, very collectively run. Here's a woodcut of St. Anthony, the patron saint of people tripping balls on LSD, or ergot poisoning back then. Here's a picture of the early LSD ampules. It came in ampules, liquid LSD from Sandoz. Now I have the pill form in the museum. I think this is my pills are a later example. And there is a picture of Dr. Hoffman back in the 50s or 60s holding the LSD molecule. And yeah, apparently there's this huge archive, the Hoffman collection, online. Page 211, it says where. Let me just pop to that. Yes, the digital Hoffman collection is all online, and you can check it out at maps.org or Erowid, EROWID.org, and you can find the Hoffman collection there.
There we
you
go.
can do your own massive amount of research on LSD using the best information available.
So there we have it. LSD. Be fucking careful.
Yeah.
It ain't for the weak,
No.
and it's nothing to toy with.
It's
But
there to help
it's
you
something everybody
understand
should
you.
try once, in my
That's right.
my opinion.
If you have
And
hallucinations,
my opinion does not reflect the opinions of any of the networks we are broadcasting on.
you will see the things that your mind is already thinking about. So if you're going to take LSD, go into it filled with good thoughts in a safe place where you're not having to worry about vehicular mayhem or stepping off something high.
Yeah,
And
just
you want to
like
trip
anything. If you're gonna do
into
something,
soft things.
if you're gonna do something that's crazy, do it responsibly.
And do it with somebody who's been there before so they can tell you, yeah, this is going to stop after about 6 or 8 hours. You will come down again.
Or don't do it at all.
Or don't do it at all. Right. Do it properly or don't do it at all for all drugs, not
There you
just
go.
LSD.
Thanks for coming out, David.
Hey, thanks for having me.
That's a fucking awesome collection.
This is part of the collection. We also have DMT bottles and
You know, come down to the
Herb
Herb Museum, 307 West Hastings,
That's
at Cannabis Culture on the second floor.
We
Buy a
bought-
bong, you know.
yeah, buy bong and check out the Vapor Lounge, play a game of pool, check out the Herb Museum.
So we got
Make a day of it.
Marijuana Man coming up next.
Awesome.
Excellent stuff, guys.
That's some pretty heavy duty shit.
A good episode.
And I can't believe you have that bottle of Sandoz, David. Is there stuff in there? There's a few drops in there.
There's 2 pills.
No way.
Wait.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
They may be sugar pills
They
because
might be sugar pills 'cause
they,
you
they,
don't
they could
know
be sugar
what
pills
happened.
because they were bought online at an auction or something. And
Actually, no,
they were bought online at an auction.
I don't know where he got it from. If there's a chance that they're real, there's a good chance.
I'm here to say that I have been ripped off buying LSD.
Me too. I bought some holy envelope paper. The inside of the envelopes, I've been totally duped. Because guys were wise to buying blotter art back in the day, and sometimes they would just sell you blotter art. Boo. And one of the big things, I don't know about everywhere, but in Winnipeg, guys would get a sheet, and then they would get just a blank, like a piece of construction paper, and they would spray it with water or alcohol, and they would press the 2 sheets together, and they would double up, man.
Yeah.
You know,
And you still got high. Or at least you spent the first 2 hours going, are you getting stoned?
Well, see,
Are you
this
getting
is the
stoned?
thing. The
You getting
shitty
off yet?
acid back in the day, the stuff that wasn't completely bogus, where it was just lightly dosed, it was just like no trip. It reminded me of MDA or MDMA, either or. It's like they engineered the trip out of LSD and repackaged this new fucking powder drug.
Yeah.
That's easier to do because you can do lots of it. So it's like, then you
first-
can brag about it. Nobody can brag like, oh, I did 1,500 micrograms. You could barely just see it. You know what I mean?
I first did LSD in 1970,
Wow.
and it was very, very strong LSD. You'd buy window pane we could get that was clear, little tiny gelatin. We would meticulously cut that in half because it was fucking
Green window
too
pane
strong.
was in my first, I would say, 10 trips.
Now here's an interesting fact about the discovery of LSD. As David was saying, Albert Hofmann, he first synthesized this substance, and then he put it away for 5 years. And on April 16th, 1943 was the day that he brought it back out, started working with it, and it absorbed through his skin.
So April 16th.
My very birthday.
Really?
Not same year. This was 12 years prior to my birth, but thanks a lot, Al, as I like to call him. LSD, yeah, that was, I always had so much fun. I don't know, the very first time that I ever took LSD was in a room full of 5 people. 4 of us had the most fun time, laughing our faces off at everything, just tripping and having such fun, and the other person was freaking out in the corner. And it occurred to me that that very person was kind of like that in real life, right? They weren't as, they weren't having fun in their life, so the LSD that they took magnified what was ever in their life, and they had a bad trip. So a lot of that can happen, but man, it was just fun for me. But one of the most unusual experiences I ever had on it, beyond just tripping around and having fun, a friend of mine and I would decide to take some acid in the morning and go trip around in the woods. So we did that. And tripping around in the woods, you don't realize how fucking stoned you get. Right? Because you're alone and in that environment when you come out. But at any rate, when we did come out and come back to my house, some of my friends had been busted for the grow that they had. So there was big excitement.
That's a bad trip.
For some reason, they all convened at my house, wanting to. So we arrived back to a dozen people freaking out about what had just happened and. But I'll tell you, the LSD cut through all of that. It made my thinking so fucking clear. We took total control of the situation, said, okay, you do this, you do that, you call so-and-so. And then we'd be firing out orders, and I kept saying, don't ask me to drive because I'm stoned on acid. And that crazy. I'd never experienced that in all the tripping that I'd ever done on this substance, to be put in a position of needing to really pull it together, and you fucking can. That was really surprised me.
I used to have to pull it together when I went home all the time. Sometimes I would trip, like I would dose before I left the house. And, and as living at home with your parents.
No,
I had to keep it together sometimes.
LSD was made illegal in California in 1966. And every other state followed, and then so did the rest of the world. Now, the only reasoning that they had for making it illegal was like it was just so thinly disguised that if you're just having fun on a substance, then you're not to have it. There's no way. Right? This is so fucked up because there's so many things that are just fun that people do and ingest, and right? Alcohol for sure, right? Which, I guess, see, they gauge it if they've decided it has any medicinal value, right? By making it illegal, they stop any research that would discover the medicinal value in modern times anyway. Albert Hofmann had discovered a lot.
And I wonder what the statistics would be if we checked for LSD casualties, like people who have flipped out.
Oh, fucking, it's the same. It'd be the same as the number of people that get killed bowling.
I bet you it would be less than recreational dirt bike accidents.
Oh, easy. There's 4 children killed every year because of baseball. A minimum in the United States.
Takes the lives of 4 children a year.
Horseback riding kills way more.
Oh yeah, horseback riding.
So it's just nonsense. It would seem to me when I take a look at the research this is why they made it illegal, is because we were having fun, and they didn't like it.
Yeah.
And Sandoz wasn't selling it to us. And the only way Sandoz can sell you shit is by a prescription, through a doctor, through the fucking fuck. And then you gotta have, bullshit. Right? So it's just nonsense, all of this stuff, really. But, yeah, LSD trips.
I've had quite a lot of them. That was, for years and years, that was my drug of choice. we would trip like every second day for months.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, it was crazy. And jam, like, play music for hours, like 6-7 hour jams. It was like we did some, yeah. Well, that's as long as it took to fucking trip, right? You know, an hour and a half on a bus from your parents' place. And then, you know, by the time you get to the jam, you're peaked. And then you're peaking for six hours, come down for an hour and a bit, enough to get home, to get to your parents' place for breakfast. You know, another hour and a half on the bus. Yeah.
Yeah, so
I was just, you know, a teenager then.
Yeah. But a very mind-expanding experience, to say the least. Now, you guys were talking about the physiology of LSD too, and I was thinking about it, where you certainly know when you've taken LSD, the telltale sign is that your pupils are fucking dilated huge, right? And this for sure is why you're seeing more stuff, right?
Yeah, well, that's...
That because your eyes are not like that in normal light. However, it was wide open. So
Yeah,
this is what you're seeing. You're
allowing
allowed
more
to
of
see
the-
traces, and
Yeah,
you can
well,
see the vibrance around the light, and things
That's
are
allowing us
different
to
colors.
see more of the UV spectrum for sure.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and that was so fun, right? I used to stand in the pool room watching fucking pool balls for hours going around tables. I just fucking
Yeah, that's funny because that's the only time I can play pool is when I'm ripped on acid. And here's a funny story. I'm such a bad pool player that I had a game that lasted for almost 45 minutes with my buddy's like 8-year-old or 9-year-old kid, and I was trying. I was really trying. I'm a very bad pool player. So, give me some acid though, and I see all those lines. Boom, that's it.
Well, as always, now I don't know. I don't want to drive this thing into the ground, but this Angolan weed that we've been smoking.
Oh my God.
We found out a little bit more about it.
So
Where it came from in that country, up in the northern part, and
well,
you
we're
know,
actually allowed to tell what we know of the story.
yeah, I can't remember the name of the northern part. Or I would have said it, but
Okay, well, the strain itself is
Cabinda.
called Liamba.
Cabinda.
It comes from
Liamba, yeah, it was the
comes
name
from the
of
northern region. It may be the Bantu tribe. They weren't sure on that information. But during the Angola Civil War in the 1970s, this seed was given to somebody who is an international traveler and cannabis preservationist, basically, and it was basically like, here they're killing our weed. Here's some Angola weed or seeds, and yeah, it wasn't long after that the individual that got the seeds out of the region was shot by the military in some sort of skirmish. So I guess he was a rebel. I really don't know what the story is, but the specifics. But I'm guessing he was some kind of rebel or.
Well, they were in a civil war.
Yeah,
so
that's my point. You know?
we're not certain exactly. We're not certain that it's related to cannabis in any way.
No, it wasn't. But that's one of the things that happens is they just eradicate everything that has to do with a culture, right? And if cannabis was part of that culture, which we know it was, they had the Angola Verde and the Angola Roja, which were the Spanish names given to them. It's the Liamba, and I don't know the name of the Angola Verde. Yeah.
So this stuff, this Angolan, is reported to have been there with the local people long before the Portuguese ever got there, and that was in like the 1500s or something.
Yeah, that's one of the oldest.
Very, very old
strains.
marijuana. So now the reason that I bring it up again is that it illustrates a very good point here. This was grown by our friend who grows some of the best marijuana on the planet, no
It's
fucking
really good
question
weed, for
about
sure.
it, indoor, and this marijuana is some of the nicest I've ever had, for sure, but it's no wildly stronger, or I mean, it's as strong, if not stronger, than all these hybrids that we have kicking around that everybody's saying is 30% stronger than it used to be.
It's just so funny, yeah. That's like, oh, cannabis is getting stronger. Well, no, it's not, because this is one of the oldest strains in the world.
Yeah,
You know
certainly
what I
the
mean?
oldest one
Preserved,
we've
like,
ever come
not
across.
tainted by Western culture, like preserved. So it's like to say that it's what, just because it's grown now is it stronger? Like
So,
I don't
interesting.
understand.
I find that very telling.
Yeah, I
I've
really
never
don't
really
understand
thought
that.
about it with the Congo that we've been smoking too, how that's exactly the same. Straight out of the land, grown here, and it's...
I mean, there's some guys out there now that want to bastardize it and fucking breed with it and stuff. But
Well, this is all
whatever.
prohibition nonsense, all these people trying to sell
I just think if you have
sell
something
their
that's
seeds.
pure and so fucking like we know it's pure, why the fuck would you want to taint it? It's like it's
Yeah. See, prohibition is coming to an end, and so is the business of the seed vendor.
Yep.
Right, so you guys might as well lay off now, because no one gives a shit about your haze crossed with fucking whatever anymore. Like, it's just got too confusing and too stupid, right? The popularity of buying seeds was born out of the desire to have the best and biggest amount of weed that you could get indoor because it was fucking illegal, right? It had nothing to do with the connoisseur strains of marijuana or people
No.
taking the time to find it. And then it became a big market, huge market, where everybody could get in on it. And it takes fucking nothing to make marijuana seeds. You make 10,000 seeds on one branch.
And most of the fucking people out there that are doing seeds aren't taking the time and don't have the space to actually say, okay, well, we're going to start 3,000 of these. There's one or two guys out there that are doing it. I know Dr. Atomic is reputable with his
Yeah,
his
but even
genetic
in that-
selections.
that-
But he's still using domesticated selections. I mean, some landrace genetics, but
Well, they're all, and then the rest are hybrids of
yeah,
unknown
so-
origin, right?
so then it becomes, becomes convoluted, right?
And then once you've crossed, let's say you take a tie and you cross it with the Northern Lights, yeah, that's not a bad thing to do, necessarily. You get some offspring. Well, then what happens is that offspring of the Northern Lights tie is then crossed again to the tie or again to the Northern Lights, and then that offspring is fucking taken and crossed. And you go, well, to what end other than to provide a different flavor to sell? Call it something else. Right, so it's gone around. Any of you growers and people who look at seeds out there, you can see how fucking many thousands there are.
And
My
what guys are
God.
doing now is they're just finding hermaphrodites and they're harvesting. They're getting like things that are only available in cut form, and they're making them hermaphrodite.
Because the name became popular.
Yeah, and then they're selling seeds that are,
Not
it's fucking hermaphrodite bag seed. Let's be honest. You know what I mean?
really.
It ain't no real way of breeding, in my opinion. You want to breed, you go to the fucking region, you get landrace genetics, you start crossing them, you find the ones you like, and you start selecting. And it takes years to get a strain. And you got guys that are just banging them off. Oh, we just made 15 strains this year. And
Yeah.
like 10 of them are S1s, which means they're selfed, which means they're hermaphrodites.
Yeah.
So it's like I really don't like the way the seed industry has gone, and it's just
Well,
so
it's
fucked up.
exploded into a crazy industry, and a fairly lucrative one. Mark and I sold seeds, and there's Mr. Larson.
How's it going, Mr. Larson?
Dana Larson in the house. But yeah, Mark and I sold seeds for a very long time, kind of kicking off the whole world of that care about it because we made them available to the world. Not that we did much other than that, but yeah, from those days, and it was even confusing then because the Dutch had their hands on it. See, when Neville first got these seeds, I know we might have covered this before, but when Neville got the first hybrid strains that he started his business with, Northern Lights, Skunk, and Haze, those were the three. There was a couple more, but those are the three that he took, and he crossed them all in every which way he could, and then crossed all of them with things that might be laying around, right? And that's where it started. So I would have to say beyond anything known to be outside that pool, it's got that in it. Northern Lights, Skunk, or Haze. Somehow, some way. Has to.
Afghani.
Northern Lights is a pure Hindu Kush. reportedly by the earliest seed companies, saying this is
Well-
what it is, and what else could it be?
See, that's general though. Is it a Pakistani Hindu Kush? Is it an Iranian Hindu Kush?
Kush is in the
or-
Hindu Kush.
Well, no, Hindu Kush is 3 countries: Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Iran. Right. So, which one is it? Right.
I thought it was all in Afghanistan.
No, it's there's 3 countries.
But
that
at
border
any
the
rate,
Kush.
when you reason it out, the people who were working on Northern Lights in reportedly Portland, Oregon, doing it indoor in the 70s, they didn't have many choices.
Nope.
They didn't have a lot of indicas to work with. And I believe the Hindu Kush was the very first one that did come out of there through Neville, because he went to Afghanistan and brought it back.
See, I think they were using
Right.
Pakistanis and Afghanis and crossing them. And then when we see that real red, kind of like the cherry kind of smelling stuff, that's the Iranian genetics, I think.
But it's hard to say, but in these very earliest seed catalogs that you look at, they do say that Northern Lights is a pure Hindu Kush, and that Northern Lights 2 is that crossed with a Thai, and then on it went. Northern Lights 5 was the most resinous Northern Lights there was, and 9 was something else. But, so, I don't know. The genetics, when you go back very easily here in the last 30 years, you can come right to the core of what all this stuff is that we're smoking, if you want to.
And it ain't Angola.
So, and it ain't Angola.
This is old.
So, people who are
I
on,
feel so blessed. Thank you very much.
people who are on the quest for finding that perfect strain, well, good luck. We have it here, in my estimation, in these landrace things that.
Yeah.
And I think under legalization, these are the kind of things that you are going to want to find and have available to you, because this is fucking real marijuana that we can attest has not been hybridized in that other pool, right?
Yeah.
So,
Unbastardized genetics.
yeah. So it's fun. My fucking kudos to the grower of this and to the 2 men who brought it to us, and the rest of the people involved. It's fucking, it is cool, let me tell you. So yeah,
Respect
man.
all around.
so, but here's a, I found a funny story. I don't know if anybody likes funny stories.
Yeah, we got time for a story.
Here's a little story coming out of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh police arrested a man this weekend after they said they were suspicious of the marijuana smell and large number of fabric softener sheets hanging in his car. Listen to this now. Alejandro Hernandez, who also goes by Alejandro Fernandez.
That was just a typo, a clerical error that he stuck with.
Faces charges of reckless driving and drug possession in connection with the traffic stop. They also found a large amount of marijuana in vacuum-sealed bags inside a computer bag, along with $1,300 in cash and 1 round of ammunition. The man later identified himself as Mr. Hernandez.
See, his problem was he was using skunk bounce sheets. He wasn't using
Yeah.
he wasn't using fresh scent. So that's a crazy thing. Here's a hint. Don't don't do that.
Yeah, don't.
There's the pointer of the day. Don't do that.
Yeah.
So we got some video I want to get to. We got 5 minutes.
I just wanted to mention
4 minutes.
I had a couple information.
I got 4 minutes and I got to play video.
Okay.
He's got retractions.
I got
Oh, he's-
information. Just do it real quick.
He's got
It
retractions.
wasn't. Okay.
Quick,
it
hurry
wasn't-
up,
Just
hurry
gone
up.
and done some
it wasn't,
research.
50
I see ya.
micrograms. It wasn't 50 micrograms.
It's 500.
That, Hoffman took. It was 250 micrograms.
Which is a killer dose.
20 is a threshold dose according to Wikipedia. The other thing I wanted to say is ergotamine, which is active ingredient in ergot, where LSD was synthesized from, is used mostly in migraine, but was used in the past to induce abortions and stop menstrual bleeding during childbirth. So
There we go. Right on.
wanted you to know.
Well, We don't have Johnny here this week. He's in Jamaica. He's gone. So let's play Johnny to the left. This is what happens at our open mics. It's just a full-on improv jam. Yeah. And this is Johnny to the left, so that when Johnny is out there and he doesn't have this crew to jam with, he can just watch the video and be like, ah, blessed man. So we're going to play that out. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to B-Real. Thanks to Pot TV. Thanks to...
It's just the music? It's not a video?
No, there's a video there, isn't there?
It's not showing up as a video.
Oh, well, if it's not showing up as a video, then let's play the Black Tusk.
Okay, well, hold on. Let me see if I can open it in a different program. No.
All right. Well, instead, these guys killed it the other night as well. This is Black Tusk, Red Eyes, and Black Skies.
Oh my god, it went off into something.
And now we're not doing anything. So we're just gonna play this out. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah. Hopefully we see you guys next week. Hopefully you guys have a killer week, a wicked weekend, and are smoking the finest that is available to you at all times. Take care, guys. Class is out of session.